At the 67th minute, N'Golo Kanté stopped the game. The referee didn't blow the whistle. There was no injury. There was just a crying child in the stands. Stamford Bridge. November 2019. A cold Tuesday night. Chelsea vs Valencia in the Champions League. 40,000 people packed into the stadium. The roar of the crowd like a living thing. Floodlights cutting through the London mist. The kind of night football was made for. Chelsea was leading 2-1. The match was balanced on a knife's edge. Every tackle mattered. Every pass could change everything. The tension in the stadium was electric. N'Golo Kanté had been everywhere that night. 54 minutes played. Already he'd covered nearly 8 kilometers. 12 interceptions. 9 successful tackles. 3 key passes. The kind of performance that doesn't make headlines but wins matches. He just won the ball in midfield. A perfectly timed tackle that dispossessed Valencia's midfielder without a foul. The crowd roared its approval. Kanté pushed forward, ball at his feet, looking for the next pass, the next movement, always thinking 2 steps ahead. And then he stopped. Not slowed down. Not paused to assess options. Stopped. Completely. His right foot on the ball. His left foot planted. His entire body going still in a way that made no tactical sense whatsoever. The Valencia players hesitated, confused. Chelsea's attackers threw their hands up, demanding the pass. The referee looked on, hand hovering near his whistle, uncertain what was happening. But Kanté wasn't looking at any of them. His head had turned toward the Matthew Harding stand. Toward the lower tier. Toward section MHL 6, row J, seat 127. Toward a 9-year-old boy named Thomas Whitmore, who was standing alone in his seat, hands covering his face, shoulders shaking with sobs that no one else in the stadium could hear. Kanté didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. To understand what happened next, you need to understand what happened 43 minutes earlier. Thomas Whitmore had saved for 11 months to buy that ticket. Every penny of his pocket money. Every birthday gift. Every coin he found in couch cushions. His father had died 14 months ago. Cancer, the kind that moves fast and takes everything, and his mother worked 2 jobs to keep them in their small flat in Fulham. Football had been Thomas's escape. Chelsea had been his father's team, and now it was his. The one constant in a world that had tilted sideways and never quite righted itself. When he'd finally saved enough for a ticket, his mother had cried. Happy tears, sad tears, proud tears all mixed together. She'd hugged him and said his father would have been so proud. Thomas had worn his oversized Chelsea shirt, his father's shirt, actually, the one that still smelled faintly of the cologne his dad used to wear. He'd taken the tube to Fulham Broadway by himself, feeling grown up and terrified in equal measure. He'd found his seat in the Matthew Harding stand, surrounded by adults who were shouting and singing and living in a moment he desperately wanted to be part of. For the first 30 minutes, it had worked. He'd cheered when Chelsea scored. He'd groaned when Valencia equalized. He'd felt connected to something bigger than his grief. And then, in the 24th minute, a man had sat down in the seat beside him. Late arrival. Beer on his breath. Phone in his hand, taking photos for social media instead of watching the match. The man had glanced at Thomas's oversized shirt and laughed. Bit big for you, mate. Your dad's, is it? Thomas had nodded, not trusting his voice. Where is he then? Couldn't be bothered to come? The question had landed like a punch. Thomas had felt his throat close up, his eyes start to burn. He'd shaken his head, unable to speak. What, too good for his own kid? Sent you here alone? The man had laughed again, already turning back to his phone, the cruelty casual and thoughtless. Thomas had held it together for another 43 minutes. Stood when everyone else stood. Tried to cheer when Chelsea scored again. But the words kept echoing in his head, too good for his own kid, too good for his own kid, too good for his own kid. By the 67th minute, the dam had broken. He'd stood up, hands covering his face, trying to hide the tears that wouldn't stop coming. All around him, adults were shouting about the match, oblivious to the small boy falling apart in their midst. Except one person wasn't oblivious. N'Golo Kanté, 8 kilometers covered, 12 interceptions completed, standing in the center circle with the ball at his feet, had looked up at exactly the right moment, and seen exactly the right thing. A child. Alone. Crying. In his father's shirt. And everything else, the match, the crowd, the Champions League, all of it, became irrelevant. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most important part of this story is still unfolding. Kanté lifted his hand. Not toward the referee. Toward his captain, Cesar Azpilicueta. "Cappy!" he called out, his voice cutting through the stadium noise with quiet authority. "One moment." Azpilicueta jogged over, concerned. "N'Golo? What's wrong?" Kanté pointed toward the Matthew Harding stand. "The boy. In row J. The blue shirt. He's crying." Azpilicueta followed Kanté's gaze, squinting at the crowd. "I don't. He's alone." Kanté interrupted, his voice still calm but carrying an edge of urgency that Azpilicueta had rarely heard. "And he needs help." The Valencia players were getting restless. The referee was walking over. The crowd's confusion was growing, the roar dimming to a confused murmur as 40,000 people tried to understand why Chelsea's midfielder had stopped playing. Kanté handed the ball to Azpilicueta and jogged toward the touchline. Manager Frank Lampard stood in the technical area, hands spread in bewilderment. "N'Golo, what are you?" "1 minute, boss," Kanté said as he ran past, already gesturing to the fourth official. "Please." 1 minute. He reached the barrier separating the pitch from the stands. Security guards moved to intercept him, but Lampard had jogged over, holding up a hand. "Let him go," the manager said quietly. "I don't know what this is, but let him go." Kanté climbed over the barrier with the efficiency of someone who had scaled taller obstacles in his life. He navigated through the narrow space between the pitch and the first row of seats, then started climbing the concrete steps toward row J. The crowd around him had gone completely silent. Phones came out. People nudged each other, pointing. The giant screens in the stadium showed Kanté climbing the steps, his face set with determination, and the commentators fell silent, unsure what they were witnessing. Thomas hadn't noticed. His hands still covered his face. His thin shoulders still shook. Kanté reached row J. He moved past confused spectators until he stood directly in front of seat 127. "Hello?" Kanté said softly in his accented English. Thomas's hands lowered slowly. His tear-stained face looked up. For a moment, he didn't seem to process what he was seeing. N'Golo Kanté, grass stains on his shorts, sweat on his brow, standing in the stands during an active Champions League match. "You are Thomas?" Kanté asked. The boy nodded, unable to speak. Kanté crouched down so they were at eye level. All around them, the crowd watched in absolute silence. The massive stadium had become intimate, focused on this one small interaction. "Why are you crying?" Kanté asked gently. Thomas's mouth opened but no sound came out. He gestured helplessly at his oversized shirt. Kanté looked at the shirt. Then at Thomas's face. Then at the empty seat beside him where the cruel man had been sitting before slipping away in embarrassment when he realized what was happening. And Kanté understood. "This is your father's shirt," he said. Not a question. A statement. Thomas nodded, fresh tears spilling down his cheeks. "Where is he?" "He died," Thomas whispered. "Last year." "He loved Chelsea. He loved you." Away from the cameras, Kanté made a choice no one expected. Kanté was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached up and pulled his own jersey over his head. Underneath, he wore the regulation blue undershirt. He held out his match-worn shirt to Thomas. "This one," Kanté said softly, "is mine. From tonight. From this match. And I want you to have it." Thomas stared at the shirt like it was something from a dream. But the match. The match will wait, Kanté said. You cannot wait. You are hurting now. So we fix this now. He gently took Thomas's father's oversized shirt and carefully folded it. Then he helped Thomas put on Kanté's still warm match jersey. It was also too big, but it smelled of grass and effort, and the game Thomas's father had loved. The crowd erupted. Not the roar of a goal. Something deeper. 40,000 people making a sound that was half cheer, half sob. Kanté wasn't finished. He sat down in the empty seat beside Thomas, the seat where the cruel man had been. I will tell you something, Kanté said, his voice barely audible over the crowd, but somehow Thomas heard every word. When I was younger than you, my father died also. And people said things. Stupid things. Things that hurt. And I learned something important. Thomas waited, eyes wide. The people who say cruel things, they do not understand loss. They have not lost someone who made the world make sense. So their words. Kanté made a dismissive gesture. Their words are like air. They blow past. They mean nothing. But your father's love? That is not air. That stays. That is in you. In this shirt. In how you came here tonight even though it was hard. That is real. Thomas's tears had stopped. He was staring at Kanté with an expression of wonder mixed with grief, mixed with something that looked like hope. You came alone tonight? Kanté asked. Thomas nodded. That is very brave. Your father would be proud. I am proud. All these people. He gestured to the crowd. They are proud. Kanté stood up. He looked down at Thomas and made a decision. Come, he said, extending his hand. Where? With me. You will finish the match from the bench. As my guest. And after, I will introduce you to the team. And you will take your father's shirt, and my shirt, and you will remember that football is not just a game. It is family. And you are family now. Thomas took Kanté's hand. They walked down the steps together, the Chelsea midfielder and the 9-year-old boy, and the stadium erupted in applause that seemed to shake the foundations of Stamford Bridge. But what followed would stay with everyone who witnessed it, forever. Kanté led Thomas along the touchline to the Chelsea bench. Frank Lampard was waiting, tears in his eyes, and he pulled Thomas into a hug before settling him on the bench between the substitutes. The entire team came over one by one, fist-bumping Thomas, ruffling his hair, treating him like he belonged. The referee, a Spanish official named Carlos del Cerro Grande, walked over to Kanté, who was pulling on a fresh jersey with his number 7. That, the referee said quietly, was the most beautiful thing I have seen in 30 years of officiating football. He needed help, Kanté replied simply. So I helped. You'll get a yellow card for delaying the match, Del Cerro said. I understand. The referee smiled. But I'm not giving it to you. Some things are more important than the rules. The match resumed. Kanté played the final 23 minutes with an intensity that bordered on supernatural. He was everywhere. Every ball. Every tackle. Every crucial interception. In the 89th minute, he won the ball in Chelsea's defensive third, drove forward through 3 Valencia players, and played a perfect through ball to Tammy Abraham, who scored to make it 3-1. When the final whistle blew, Kanté didn't celebrate with his teammates. He jogged straight to the bench, picked up Thomas, and carried him onto the pitch. The entire Chelsea squad gathered around them for the team photo. In the dressing room afterward, Kanté took a marker and wrote on Thomas's father's folded shirt. For your father. He raised a brave son. Golo, 67. Thomas clutched both shirts, his father's and Kanté's, and asked one question. Why did you stop? You could have scored. Kanté knelt down one more time. Because some goals matter more than others. And today, you were the goal. Share and subscribe. Some stories deserve to be remembered. 3 years later, Thomas Whitmore walked onto the Stamford Bridge pitch as a Chelsea Academy player. His locker had 2 shirts hanging in it, his father's old jersey, and the one Kanté gave him at the 67th minute. That night in 2019, N'Golo Kanté didn't just win a football match. He taught 40,000 people what true strength looks like, stopping when everyone else runs forward, seeing when everyone else looks away, caring when the clock is still ticking. The match ball from that night sits in Stamford Bridge's museum. Next to it, a small plaque. 67th minute. The moment football remembered what it's for.